Well, I did one of the hardest things that I've ever done, which was also one of the most rewarding. No food, no caffeine, and no pleasure for 7 straight days on a whim's notice, meaning I had about 6 hours, felt called, made a decision, and I did a 7-day fast. And I decided to break it down, share the whole thing. I share why I did it, exactly how I did it, and my 5 biggest takeaways from doing it. And I'm going to say this loudly before we get into the show. I highly recommend and encourage anybody to explore this option for whatever reason you feel called, because it was one of the most powerful and profound things that I've ever done in my life. And so without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. Happy New Year again. I've said that a few times, but I feel incredibly invigorated and excited, and I just keep sharing it. And so the reason I am talking to you today is because I just completed a 7-day fast. And I posted on Instagram and I asked everybody if they wanted me to share takeaways or anything that I learned or what my big experience was like. And everybody said yes. And so here I am. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about what I just did, why I did it, and a few of the takeaways, because truthfully, I'm still getting them now that I am a day and a half back into eating. And there's a lot of downloads still hitting me. So I might do an update on social. But I will start by saying that it was probably one of the most profound and also hardest things that I've ever completed in my life, and something that I'm going to keep in my toolbox and my tool chest, and also to do a lot more frequently than I ever have before. And so just to even give context before I start breaking this show down, which I'm going to tell you why I did the fast, what I did during the fast, and then what my takeaways were. And my intention for today's show is just for you to maybe have a takeaway that lands, or maybe to challenge you or to inspire you to try something or to do something for yourself, to shift your mindset or have the ability to do harder things or to push through a process of something. And so I have my notes in front of me. They're literally written on a piece of paper. They're written on a piece of paper. So I follow along and I make sure that I make it as clear as possible, because I don't even know how else to structure this, because it was just so profound and so powerful. But prior to this, the longest fast that I'd ever done, typically for my health, was like 3 days. I think it was like 72 hours, maybe 4 days, like 96. But this fast I did for 7 days. And so I want to tell you why I did it. And truthfully, I started last Sunday and I went till this Sunday. And in the new year, I made a vision board. I've been talking about vision and inspiring you to make your own and take action on yours. And I had no plan of doing a fast. It wasn't on my radar. I've just been eating healthy, staying healthy at 41. And I woke up last Sunday morning, which I don't even know what date that was. It was probably like January 5th, I think. And I woke up and I fast in the morning normally. And I watched my church service, one of my favorite pastors, whose name is Philip Anthony Mitchell. And he runs a church out of Atlanta called 2819. And before I go to church on Sunday, I always watch a church service in my loft, and just get tuned in on Sundays and my rest day. And I watch a lot of church. And so I watched this sermon and it hit me like straight to my core. Like it struck me at the deepest level. And it was basically talking about doing a no pleasure fast, including no food. And why? And it was to consecrate my relationship with God. And I'm unapologetic about my faith. And I love all people, and I love Jesus, and I love God. And it's been the greatest decision of my entire life, and feels good to finally be home. And it hit me that morning. No previous conversation, no nothing. And I watched that sermon, and then it kind of tickled me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I wasn't fully decided yet. It was just like an idea. And then I ended up going to my church and had a conversation with somebody, and they said they were about to fast. And then I ended up going and having dinner with my best friends, and his wife, Danny, was like, I'm starting a fast tomorrow or today. But I'm going to do like 36 hours. And so even after hearing it and like having it speak to my heart at the deepest level, I was surrounded by evidence, and I was like, oh, I think I'm being really called to do this. And the fast was basically this. And so it was no food, no caffeine, and no pleasure. And so it was a straight up weaken my flesh, really kind of put my money where my mouth is, and rely on God for everything. And with no prep. There was no time of like, oh, I'm running a marathon, or I'm about to do this thing, or I'm going to prepare this week, or make my life easy. My calendar was full of calls all week. I had my son home from school and he was also sick. And so I had hundreds and hundreds of reasons popping up. I'm like, is now the right time? Should I wait? Should I plan it? Should I prep for it? And I made the decision. So last Sunday evening at 5 p.m., I was like, no, I'm doing this. And I just made the decision to do it. And the way that I did it was water only, no caffeine, no food, and no pleasure. So for me, no pleasure was if it wasn't work related, like posting on social media, I wasn't doing it. So I wasn't scrolling Instagram. I didn't watch any YouTube videos. I didn't listen to any music. And any moment of downtime that I had, which by the way, I had a lot of downtime when you're not thinking about food or eating all the time, I made the decision that I was going to fill that in with God. And so that was me reading my Bible. That was me watching ministry. That was me listening to worship music. And even if that was somebody else, I also filled it with learning, right? Like if you do this, I was listening to things to like train my brain, or learning about a topic, or learning about something I wanted to get better at. I was planning things, but there was no consumption of pleasure. So the whole point was basically for me to deny my earthly pleasures, or the pleasures of my flesh. And quite frankly, after doing this fast, what I can say are the things that distract me every single day that actually prevent me from living in pleasure and living in gratitude in the present moment. And so I started last Sunday, and I went from Sunday night until church yesterday morning. And so the fast was a success. It was the hardest thing, but the most inspiring thing that I've ever done. And I wrote down 5 takeaways that I want to share with you just from my personal experience. So the number one takeaway, and the number one thing that I realized, is that my presence level got rocket fuel added to it. It was like time slowed down. Now, in the beginning, day 1 was really easy. Day 2 was relatively easy, but by day 2, I'd had a slight headache on day 1, drank some water, had some electrolytes. By day 2, the hunger pains really started to slice in. And what I would notice is that every time I focused on them, they got worse. But every time I acknowledged them, but I didn't allow my brain to ruminate about how hungry I was, or that I'm not going to have food for 5.5 more days, it was instantly silenced, and the hunger pain went away because my brain was making it 10 times worse. And so the hunger pains were like a call to presence. But by day 3, it was pretty much subsided. There was like this low level one that existed most of the time, but it didn't last forever. It didn't stick around. And the way that I navigated it is that every time I had one, I would just pray. And truthfully, it was presencing myself to quiet my mind, because my mind was making it so much worse. And then I would just be hyper alert. I could hear things better. I could smell things more. And trust me, with an 8-year-old and cooking him like 5 to 6 meals a day, I could smell everything. It was like exposure therapy built in. But there was this level of presence in me. I noticed things, I noticed situations, I heard things differently. And there was this deep level of groundedness in me, like just very deeply grounded. I was like moving more meticulous. I was moving slower, but intentional. And it was like every single decision that I was making intentionally. There was no distraction or wasted time. So it just brought this level of presence and clarity to me that even carried through on all of my calls. I had stacked days of calls, like 8 hours a day with one-on-one clients and helping them scale, and one of them launching their next event, and another one working on a marketing strategy for a new product launch, and another one with customer journey. And I had nothing but energy. It was like lightning was shooting through my body, but also I was deeply present. I was just present on phone calls. I was present in text messages. I was present with my son. I was present in my relationships. I was present with my friends. And it like eliminated all the distractions that cause all this noise and complexity in my life. And so the presence was probably like one of the biggest takeaways. The second biggest takeaway was my mindset. And truthfully, at the beginning, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't know if I'd be able to do it, but I knew that I was going to try and I was going to give it my best. But as the fast went on, I realized that the discipline and the consistency with it was shifting my brain and the way that I saw things and thought about things, and I thought possibilities. And it, like, the easiest way to think about it is like my brain shifted from scarcity and fear to like abundance and possibility. And my mind just started reshifting its pattern of like how it spoke to me. And it was genuinely like doubt to confidence. But in the process, what I realized in my mind and how my mind works, and even things that I've taught for years, is that any moment that I focused on the finish line, any moment I thought about when the fast was ending, how many days that I had, it got 10 to 20 times worse. So when I would focus on like, oh, I have 5 more days or 4 more days, I would instantly get hungry. My body would hurt. I would start to get emotional and operate in fear. But then anytime I caught it and I focused on the process, and I was like, no, you made a commitment to do it. Just be in it. Like, just acknowledge the feeling, acknowledge your gut, acknowledge your brain, like have gratitude that you're able to do this. It instantly went away, and it created like this unlimited pool of motivation in me and drive and desire in me to do this. And it wasn't about like accomplishing it or like whether I could tell people or not. Like, it was just genuinely about the internal game that we all face as entrepreneurs and humans in life. And so my mindset shifted drastically. And underneath that, I also found myself 1,000 times more productive, because one of the things that I noticed the most is the third takeaway, which is my giant dependence on distraction. And in that takeaway, what I mean by that is that removing food also removed the option for food. Removing videos removed the option for videos. Removing caffeine removed the option for caffeine. And so in my day-to-day life, where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to have lunch today. What am I going to have for lunch today? I would think about it and I would ponder on it. And it would be like I was working from meal to meal instead of being present. And it helped me realize this very, very deep codependency that I had on distraction, to where like there were parts of my day where like, oh, if I just get one more podcast done, then I can go watch YouTube. If I get one more podcast done, I can go eat my meal. If I get one more podcast done, I can go do that thing. But all of that dependence on the distractions was robbing me from the present. And I never realized how often, and I'm talking hundreds of times a day, that my brain would be somewhere completely different than my body was. No matter how many stillness practices I have, no matter how many breathwork practices I have, I was not there. And by eliminating all of the distractions, it brought this level of presence to me, which brought this level of productivity that I have never felt in my entire life. Not even to mention the things that I got done with no food in my body. I was operating on like rocket fuel. I felt like I could have gone for another 2 weeks. I felt like I could have run a marathon. Now, I don't think I could have, like there wasn't any food coming in my body. But that awareness from takeaway one, or the presence of takeaway one, and the mindset that was shifting because I was doing this thing, but it wasn't about the result. It was about the process, and I'm choosing it over to over. It's like some days there were like 500 times I had to remind myself, I'm like, oh no, you don't get to think about food. You're not having it for a couple of days. Or no, don't think about that. You're not having it. Don't think about that. You're not having it. It was like doing this massive surgery on my brain and on my focus. But every time I would acknowledge it, it would bring me back to the present and realize I had nothing but time in front of me. And the more present I was, the more effective I was at getting things done. I was doing extra laundry. I was cleaning up the house. I was organizing things. I was taking notes. I was reading my Bible. And I even set a goal this year to read the Bible in a year. And I'm reading it in chronological order. Well, here's an update. It's day 13 of the year. And because of all the time that I had removing those distractions, while also doing calls and raising my son and making him meals and sledding with him and going skiing and doing all the things that we do, I'm on day like 50 of my Bible plan, 13 days into the year. And I don't want to turn the TV back on, and I don't want to have caffeine again. I'm still off of it. I'm just having decaf Americanos. And it's bringing this like deep desire in me to like grow and to be better and to love the process to get to the results on the other side. But everywhere in my life, it's spilled over. But it also is a very hard look. about my dependence on distractions and how many times I get lost and pulled off course, or I say I want something on my vision board, but my actions don't match. And by eliminating all of them, it allowed me to see my default habits. It allowed me to see where I default to picking up my phone or scrolling YouTube shorts before bed, or I'm just looking for a reason to walk around the house, or I'm going to drive to the coffee shop because like I have to go drive there. But that 40 minutes of time out away was like distracting from the things that I truly desired and that I wanted in my life. And I'd say that the number one takeaway, which I said was presence, was the greatest gift of like allowing me to truly be present and to be grounded. But that dependence on distraction was the most eye-opening thing that I've ever had. And realizing that like I take food for granted and I convince myself I need it all the time. And really, I don't. I survived and I thrived. The only thing I had was electrolytes. Thank you, your routine, which by the way, the best electrolytes ever. Himalayan sea salt, lemon, apple cider vinegar. I'm not sponsored, not affiliated. I love them to pieces. Jake and PJ, but it's your routine. It's the yellow packets. If you've ever been in the event, I absolutely love it. And those were the only thing that I had besides water. And I was so dependent in my life, but really I was just so distracted from the things that I wanted and the goals that I have and the plans that I have, that even by eliminating them, it started bringing my vision to life. It started bringing clear steps of where I want to go and how I want to get there. It started to bring action items that I should be taking them on and meetings that I get to have. And it was like this giant download of clarity because I removed all the noise. And not only did I remove it, but it wasn't even an option. And so instead of pondering it and being distracted and ruminating, all I was allowed to do was to sit there and to plan and to think like, who do I want to be? What do I want to do different? What do I want to carry away from this? How do I want to go into this? And that was like the most eye-opening thing that I experienced. The fourth one was my emotional regulation. And I'm a pretty emotional guy. I don't hide from it. I'm not upset about it. But when it gets bad and when I have bad days, I got a bad day around Christmas, I'll spiral. I'll start dry heaving with tears. I will be so hyperventilating and so upset that I'll like snot coming out. I can't breathe. I can't do anything. And I realized that it was my brain. It was my brain over dramatizing all of my emotions. It was my brain, like worst case scenario, in defaulting back to survival mode from childhood and trauma that didn't have to be there anymore. And so during this whole time, I had some of the most challenging conversations and situations in my life that I've had in the last couple of years. And it was so interesting because my body and my brain like recognized the moment, but my body stayed really calm. And the emotional regulation that I picked up from this is going to stick around forever. I told you how I felt grounded, but I also felt emotionally regulated. And I had this default of like doom scrolling and fear scrolling and, feeling stagnant or allowing it for me to procrastinate it because those moments were so dramatized in my head over and over about how bad it could be and what if this happened and what if this happened, no matter how many times I've worked on them. And 7 days of no pleasure, it removed all of it. And I mean all of it, to where I started to get excited about challenging conversations, or like there's something in breakdown. I'm like, oh my God, well, let's talk about it. Not let's fix it, not let's like avoid it, but like, let's just talk about it, right? Like it's not going to get fixed overnight. But I had this deep level of groundedness. And the way I described it to my best friend at dinner last night was like, it's like if you have a keel on a boat, the emotional regulation made my keel 300 feet deeper. And I knew my boat was good no matter what storms were happening or how much wind was ripping or tearing my sails. I was like, no, I'm good. Like I get to acknowledge that it's there, but it doesn't get to own me. It doesn't get to drive me. It doesn't get to do anything but give me a warning sign or a filter or a red flag that says, hey, you should pay attention to this, but it's still up to you to solve. And that was the most profound part of it. And at any moment during this fast that I struggled, where I was having tears for a moment or fears or that I'm not going to eat, the only thing I shifted to was gratitude. And I would just go into all the things I'm grateful for. And even my prayers changed. And my prayers just started going straight to gratitude. Like, God, I'm so grateful that I have my health. I'm so grateful that you're helping me. God, just grateful that I've had the food and I have the opportunity to do this. God, I'm so grateful for my sun and my water. I'm so grateful for A, B, and C. And every time I did that, the emotions subsided and the hunger pains or the feelings in my body subsided. And it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever experienced in my life, which brings me to the fifth takeaway. And the fifth takeaway is that I made a decision and I decided. And every single time I got into doubt, I got into process, I got into fear, I was like, you decided. Just own the decision. There is no way out. There's no backing out. There's no letting go of it. You made a commitment to God that you're going to do this from church to church to consecrate your relationship with God. But keep your word to yourself and understand that that decision is on the other side of this week. But what you're going through right now is just a process to get there. Just like when I decide to go to the gym and get stronger or lose weight, it's not about going to the gym every day. That might be hard. It might be challenging at times. It's about what's on the other side of it. But I made the decision and I got to own that decision. And owning that decision and even telling myself internally that I decided and I owned the decision took away all the negotiating power, took away all the doubt, all the fear. And I had beautiful friends in my circle like, oh man, I don't know how you're going to do it. The longest I've ever done it. And then they're like, I don't know how you're doing it. I was like, well, it doesn't matter because it's just between me and me. Like I made the decision. None of their noise got in, none of their doubts or even their confidence. Like, oh dude, you got this easy. None of it came in. It was a decision between me and me. And I made that decision from my heart because I was called to do it. But I also made a decision with myself that I would see it all the way through. And I realized the most profound part is that I made the decision, and that a decision came from alignment. It came from my heart, my body, and my mind all agreeing. And I just told myself hundreds of times, I decided. There was no space for negotiation. There was no space to doubt it. There was no space to question it. And I was like, I'm going to see this through the end. And I realized how many times in life or in business, I try to be half pregnant, where I make like a half-hearted decision or I start something, but it doesn't look or feel the right way, or it's not going the exact way I want. And then I change it, or I doubt it, or I make concessions for it. And how often that gets in the way of the glory on the other side of the thing that I said I wanted. And so these takeaways were huge for me. And like I said, they're still downloading in me. I still have more and more coming, but I felt really called to share that. And I'm going to give you a bonus tip. Bonus tip is when you end a fast, eat really light and eat really slow because your body gets used to not having food in you. And you have to titrate and tilt yourself back in very gently with anything besides the water that you were eating or drinking. Well, I considered water my food, eating or drinking. But a bonus benefit is it changed my relationship with food. And I'm already healthy. I'm the healthiest I've ever been at 41. I got abs, I got muscles, I'm clear, I'm in clean bill of health. But all cravings are gone. All sugar cravings are gone. All, oh, I'll just do it this one time. Like, no, like I want to nurture and nourish my body and give it life in every single thing that I eat now. I'm so intentional about it. I think about it now. I'm thinking about my meals and how it's going to make me feel. And it's been a big bonus. But if you do feel called to do this or do something like this, I invite you to take it slow when you start eating again, because I ate a very big meal and I paid for it. My stomach hurt. I was lethargic because I didn't realize how much energy our body takes to process food. And I went from having more energy than I've ever had in my life to eating a meal and wanting to take a nap for like 6 hours. And so lesson learned that I'm eating really light today. And I'm going to spend the next couple of days like gently titrating myself back up to come back into it. But that would be my bonus tip and my way to integrate again. And so my heart felt called to share this with you. And also in the show notes, we're going to include a link to the sermon from my pastor that called me to do this. If you feel called to watch it, I would highly recommend it. He's incredible. But I wanted to share this with you. So maybe you feel inspired, you want to try something hard, you want to try something different, or you want to call yourself to build a deeper relationship with you or your deeper relationship with God. I would highly, highly recommend it. But I wanted to share my experience, and I would love it if you sent me a DM. Like, tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I'm crazy. Tell me if any of the takeaways landed. Ask me any questions. Just let me be of service, but also let me know I'm not in an echo chamber, because I love hearing from you. And so wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have the most beautiful day. We're going to wrap the show and land the plane here. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, and especially the one with yourself. Invest in yourself because you're worth it. make decisions to do things out of your heart, and realize that once you decide, follow the steps of the process so that you can have the glory on the other side. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next episode, or you'll hear me in your earballs.